Okay, folks, tribe around the world. I said this to Terry before I hit record. I'm like a child in a candy store because I've got the doyen of pressure mapping with us. It's Terry Hashimoto. I'm so thrilled to see you. Welcome to our show, man. How are you?
Mark, excellent. And to all the people listening, very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Well, look, I'm a golf nerd that way, so I knew exactly who you were, and I've been trying to get to you for the longest time. But for folks who don't know Terry, give us the brief bio, the synopsis, please.
Well, a long time ago, I went to school, University of Miami, graduated, tried to be a golf pro. Ended up not being too good at it relative to those stars.
Uh-huh.
And went back to Canada, started my own golf store, ended up owning the largest golf company in Canada's history called Jazz Golf. Took it public in 2000, later went on to develop technology, inertial measuring units. It became Sky Pro, the little clip that goes in a
Yeah.
club to measure angular velocities. Got out of that, lost quite a bit of money in that, even though we turned out to be a good product.
Mhm.
Learned about the tech business, went into pressure mapping. I wanted to make concussion skull caps for online neurological assessments, but the people that were selling me the material didn't want to do that. So we built golf pressure mats, and that became BodiTrak.
Yeah.
And in that process, I also figured out how to use pressure mapping to develop artificial intelligence for shaft fitting called Swing Balance AI. Sold that company. And I'm here now with a company called Golf Rehab in Toronto. Pitched them how to use golf as a recovery sport with modern golf in Toronto. And we're very excited because we finally have found a committed partner to now find alternative ways to seek new golfers,
Mhm.
golfers who have any vestibular problem, any balance issues, now to begin to use golf as a recovery sport. And from my perspective, the number one way to recover from a concussion is the proprioception from walking on uneven surfaces. The last time I checked, when I talked to Sir Nick, that's called a golf course.
Yeah. Okay. Whoa. As I
I
was saying,
wanted to give you a hot start, Mark.
as I was saying, look, I wanna just kiss the golf for recovery because I think that's tremendous. I think our game is so great in so many ways. But that's at the end of the conversation.
Sure.
I've got to ask this: with all these things you've developed and the way your mind seems to want to go, what did you study when you were down there at the University of Miami?
All I want to do is play golf, Mark. You know how that rolls. I
Uh-huh.
was actually an adequate golfer. Played golf all over the world. But to me, I didn't really care about the professional golf. When I graduated in 1980, the money winner back then, I can't remember the name, and he won $350,000 that year. And after expenses, that wasn't that much money. And my dad said to me, "Are you sure you want to go down that path?" He says, "You're pretty good at business. Why don't you give that a route?" And he was right. Tom Kite was the name, and Nathaniel Crosby went to school at University of Miami with me. So I got to hang around with Tom and all these guys, through Nate. And they were, I didn't think they were that much better than me, but they were committed to the game. I loved the game as a hard worker. I wasn't talented and gifted like they were, but I was just a hard worker. And to me, you couldn't make that much money at it back then. Now, if I was playing now, heck,
Mhm.
man, I forget all the technology, forget anything. I'm going to go bust my tail and try to win one tournament and be a multi-zillionaire.
Well, yeah, that's the truth. Golf nowadays, and look, I'm kind of the golf instructor bridge between the old and the new. I'm 52 years old and fabulous and holding, and so I'm between the Sony Handycam generation of golf instructors and now the new crowd who, thanks to people like yourself, we have all of this technology. But I want to start here and I want to make a statement and just let you ride with this, okay? Um, Ever since I began in golf and started teaching golf, I was a voracious reader. I was fortunate to meet a few great golf instructors, one of them being John Jacobs. And I developed my theory, which was to play really good golf, you need two good connections. You need a good connection on the golf club you're holding, your only way of messaging the golf ball. And then you need a proper connection with the ground. Because somewhere in the back of my head, I have Sam Snead saying always, a good golf swing is built from the ground up. And then along comes you, and you can measure and then generate and then modify and improve our understanding of how golfers move along the ground. And you've made some statements here in my phone that I was like, yeah, I got to get to that. But before there, let's talk about pressure mapping. Let's talk about golfers using the ground properly. Just do you, please.
Well, I'll get right to the modern sort of strategy in terms of making a swing. We're all talking about hitting the ball from the inside path.
Yeah.
And it's so easy. Path always follows pressure. So as long as you go to the inside of your foot has got 4 arches on it. The
Yeah.
ball of your foot, the old timers called it the ball of your foot. That's called the transverse distal arch. And where your ankle joins the foot is called the transverse proximal arch. And then you've got 2 longitudinal arches. Everybody thinks there's only like 1 arch. It's not true, there's 4.
Okay.
But regardless of that, the path will always follow pressure. So as long as you go from the toes into the heels during your backswing and keep it in your heels, you're on the inside path. If you're in your toes, you're outside of that path. So it's ridiculously easy to hit the ball on the inside path, except it's tremendously hard because your arms have a mass, about 10% of your body weight. So I weigh about 200 if I'm being nice to myself. You take a 20-pound ball and you're going towards the target. Now you got to have counterbalance in your heels to offset the forces going towards impact.
Yeah, yes. I want to ask you this then, because everyone's like, wow, that apart from the really scientific sounding names, that sounds very easy for me to do.
It is.
But would you say that certain folks just kind of do this naturally? Because you watch certain golfers and they seem to just glide around on the ground, and then other golfers, they swing a club and that mass you talk of in their arms and the golf club and such, that overrides just the proper movement on the turf. So would you say that certain folks just seem to do it more naturally than others?
Well, I would say that great players like I'll use Boo Weekley as an example.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy lives on chicken wings and beer, and only time he goes on tour is when he needs a new boat. And he just glides through it naturally, perhaps, but I think he found it during his trials and tribulations as a golfer. And
you know how he learned the game?
No.
I had him on the show, because Boo flushes. This guy hits it in the middle every single time. And he said when he was down there in Tifton, Georgia at ABAC, Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, he said the pro basically connected something from the wall, connected it to his head. And he said he just had to swing back and forth around that. And so I can see why when he fixed himself over here, to move, you'd have to move properly in your feet, because if you weren't, you would have a limited range of motion.
Well, plus you'd be falling forward. So the butt plane in golf, like I love 3D and study it as well as I can. I mean, if your butt's consistently in one place, your pressure's in the correct.
Your butt like your rear end.
Right, your rear end. Hogan talks about that a little bit, and is like, Hogan, there's a couple of well-known, famous broadcasters out there that have criticized the 5 fundamentals of golf, but Ben talks about the grip, stance, setup, backswing, downswing. But in the backswing, and to me, this is if I was taking a golf lesson from any instructor, the very first thing I'd ask the instructor is, what initiates the backswing? Because if you can't tell me what initiates the backswing, how the hell do you know how to take the club back? What pulls the trigger? Is it a neurological issue? Could be. But in terms of kinetics, kinesia, what actually moves, what starts the backswing? And it's going to be your lead toe.
I was about to say, because me, I've read everything. I've taught a lot of golfers, a lot of them successful at the high level. And, I was always the kind of guy to, now mea culpa with you, certain folks, they'd started a certain way. So if it was like overbearing in one area, I'd have them focus on another. Like if it was excessively handsy, I'd have them focus on the core. If it was all core and drag the handle kind of thing. But then you text me and you like, what starts the backswing? It starts with a big toe it's the trail foot, correct?
Well, it's the lead foot. I mean, Hogan said the hands pull the arms pull the shoulders pull the hips, and hips pull the legs. So I grew up playing golf, hands back, and then I reversed it: legs, hips, shoulders, arms, and hands. Yeah, same deal, right? Hands back, legs down. That's and then I took lessons from Bob Toski while I was going to school at University of Miami. We became great friends. but hands back, legs down. Hogan almost had it right. So the guys who took on Ben Hogan, in my opinion, should just keep quiet because they didn't understand. He was the forefounder of the kinematic sequence, in my opinion. And he got it right, except he didn't have the objective tools to understand what we were able to learn. I took it one step further, and I used to put string gauges and IMUs on shafts and see which one actually took off first. Was it the hands or was it the feet? Turns out it's always the lead foot for a great player, and it's the lead toe, typically moving the pressure to the mid of the trail foot.
Okay, yes. And people are seeing this now, and for the folks watching on YouTube, you can see me back and forth like this in my hand. Because now you see all the long drivers, right, where they pressurize the forward side and and then they like Kyle Berkshire and Martin Borgmeyer now, where they all like lead foot, trail foot, and they're almost starting the motion with a little rock forward, and that propels them off there, and so the sequence gets good.
We trademark a way to teach called golf dance. We're going to be launching it here in Toronto very soon with Modern Golf. And in fact, that's what we do, but not to that extreme extent, because what's interesting, in my opinion, and, try to keep things relatively organized, is, if you can't tell a student what initiates the backswing, don't teach. And it's that simple. And because if you can't tell, look, would you ever go into a car and put it in drive before you start the engine?
No.
Right? It won't work.
Yeah.
Everything's out of sync. Now, the other thing about the kinematic sequence that we found out is that we can use it to identify injuries. And so if you're out of sync, and there isn't one, I mean, biomechanics, and I love him. We brought Satchel to the table. We made him famous. He'll say otherwise. That's okay. But Satchel, if you're listening, I love you.
Wait. This is to show you how wrong I had it, because I've had Satchel on you a couple of times before I got to you, but then getting to you is like getting to the gospel, really.
Well, look at. I've never been. I'm a very hypertension guy. I live in a place called Prince Edward Island, and there's a reason why I live there. It's not because I want to be out there, but I want to get out there a little bit enough now, because the guys that really helped us were guys like Scotty Hamilton, John Tillery, Jake Thurm. Because when we first started BodiTrak, really, we tried to get a partner. We're a hardware company, and we wanted Swing Cat to use our pressure mats. They were primarily a software company, and now they are just a software company. But really, no one in the world knew how to use this stuff. So I went out. I had a very good team of people and investment team, and they said, Terry, just get out there. You've been on tour before. This is not an uncomfortable area for you, so go out there. And I went out on tour with Jake, Scotty, and JT, and and others, Steve Cox, PGA, a whole bunch. But if I miss you, I'm sorry. But they actually we together collaborated, and we discovered, look, a great player in their irons all has linear traces. Why is that? Not so good players, top 3 pressure flaws in the golf: too much pressure in the toes for the average golfer during their swing. That's number 1. Number 2 is backing up prior to impact in the irons. That's number 2. And number 3 is old guys like me don't get pressure to the lead side quick enough. And it turns out that the number 1 way to gain distance, and this is relevant to Kyle Berkshire, et cetera, the number 1 way to get distance is and also consistency, and I'll get to that after, but the number 1 way to gain distance and consistency is to get pressure to the lead side early and have the strength and stability to be able to keep it and maintain it there during impact. Now, what's cool about that is that it also generates a more consistent low point.
Yeah. I want to delve into, I want to mine those a little bit, because I think there's a lot that people can learn, because they're hearing all the theory and stuff, and everyone's like, all right, cool, I want to do that. So
not theory. It's just, not to cut you off, but sorry, I pardon me, Mark, but it would be theory if we didn't have literally thousands, and I was going to say tens of thousands. When Dave Phillips and those guys invited me to come to TPI, it wasn't because I was a nice guy. It was because I was able to diagnose that a guy that I had never seen the pressure mapping. They said, take a look at this trace. And I looked at it, and Dr. Peter Mackay from San Diego sent it to me, a good friend of mine from Canada. He said, take a look at that. And I said, what do you think? I said, well, it looks like you're obviously a good player. I said, there's a restriction on his lead side. He says, what the hell? How do you know that? I said, well, in the velocities chart, there's 2 spikes, and it's all in front of the main spike. And I said, so he's got an issue on his lead side. It turned out it was Dave Phillips' swing. He may deny this or not. Within a day or two, I was down in Oceanside talking to him about pressure mapping. and diagnosing their with all the various, they've collected thousands of datas. But until you get through it, because I couldn't figure it out. I'm just a stupid guy, but I'm stubborn. It's like my golf game. I'm stubborn. I'm a grinder. And I had to look for common denominators, and the one common denominator that is still current today is that every great player, everybody who's won a major that we have their traces of in the last 10 years, they're all dead linear in their irons. Yeah. And that's because they have the proper pressure in the heels, the counterbalance during their swing, so that they don't go forward into the toes. The toes are the brakes, the heels are the accelerators, the ankles are the shock absorber and propulsion system of your swing.
You have sort of gone before me over there, and forgive me for my poor vernacular. What I was basically saying is taking something cerebral and making it for the golfer listening to go and do this now.
Right.
And you talk about I love the toes are the brakes and the heels are the
accelerators.
The accelerators. I'll never forget, as a young golfer, Ernie Els saying to me, he goes, I play my best golf when I feel like I stay in my heels for longer.
Absolutely. Now, biomechanics don't like it when I say heels, because technically it's not the heels. I just use that to polarize between the toes. And it's really where I said where the ankle joins the foot, which is called the transverse proximal arch. That's three big words for me. They don't make any sense, but it's just so that biomechs don't come up my butt and tell me how stupid I am. And that's it, end statement. But the golf is really, to me, positional golf is finished. The new way to teach is going to be learning how to foot movement patterns. If you talk to any a well-known instructor today, they may say to you that the grip no longer is a fundamental of the game, because so many people have, like Azinger. I mean, look how strong his grip was. Look at all the different grips out there today. Positional golf at the top of the swing, the top of your swing is completely irrelevant, because at the top of your swing, the pressure is already on your lead side for a good player.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot I still want to get back to. Along, moving to the heels, and I'm not using the biomechanical vernacular because
That's okay.
I do a drill with so many people, and it's kind of enlightening to them about how their body moves. And again, I don't think people are aware enough of how their feet are. They just, they grab by what might feel different, whether it's their body rotation or whatever the case might be. But it's essentially me, and I give them a piece of rope and I hook it around something low on the ground, like a stick, or in the gym around the Smith machine. And then I have them basically act like a pulley. So on your backswing, you pull back, and then the through swing, you pull through, and the golfers feel very rotational. But what they never really realize is, to get that moving, how the pressure is moving in their feet. And there's no side to side really whatsoever.
Well, I mean, we measure pressure moving in three directions, and this is where I wish if I could go back, and I used to be a commercially rated pilot. I have an expression: there are no rear view mirrors in a jet airplane, and I don't want to look back. But if we could go back and just maybe consider what we made mistakes on, we made it a little bit too complicated, because that's what happens when you don't understand things. And when we started, we understood nothing. And now we know so much that we know. I like to tell people, the more I know, the less I know, because one thing leads to another question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the three fundamentals of pressure mapping are: number one, great players set up more strong on the lead side. And if you play in the UK, we noticed that they set up even slightly more stronger on the lead side.
The bad lies in the wind.
Exactly.
I grew up at the coast. I know what it's like.
Exactly. And same in Texas, and same where I'm from, Winnipeg, Manitoba. We have strong winds, same deal. You'll see more guys doing that, but it also buys you time to get to the trail side. Okay. So, now when I was taking lessons from Toski, this is a great story in short. He used to say, set up 60-40 on the right side. Now, we'd called it weight back then. And Bob's deal was, he thought, well, if the weight's going to go there anyways, why not put it there so that you're reducing part of the mechanical motion. Mm-hmm. Later on, I had a chance to put Bob on the pressure mat when he was like 90, not too long ago. Right. He sets up 60-40 on the lead side. He had a
but it's amazing, all those legends, and I've had Mr. Tusky on this, they had great minds, but they sort of taught what they felt. And you said earlier, now with this stuff, thanks to you, pressure mapping and launch monitors and stuff, you can get the MRI of what's going on. So to that, so when I'm involved with FlightScope, and FlightScope partnered with BodiTrak for a while, and And I got the mat, and I was uninformed enough to not use it completely. But the one thing I did know was about the linear trace, and it did occur to me soon enough, and then thankfully this was proved later, that the side to side movement, it moved a lot quicker and earlier than people wanted. And like the backward movement to the trail side didn't last very long. And
No.
forward movement to the forward side didn't last very long. And I contend, and I would love your opinion, that golfers, they don't really know when they should stall backwards movement and forwards movement. They're all going in one direction or the other, just way too long during their swing.
Well, we measure pressure in three directions: side to side, heel to toe, and up and down.
Yeah.
And Henry at FlightScope was, in my opinion, and he's a genius.
He is a genius.
I admire Henry. He
Mhm.
gave BodiTrak a chance when we didn't deserve to get a chance. He pioneered the combination of putting launch monitors with pressure mapping. It didn't go as well as we'd like to, primarily because I didn't, and others like me didn't do a good enough job of getting our message to the market. But now through Mark, with your help, we can help do that better.
Mhm.
Like, it blows my mind when I see the guys talking about, launch data. I mean, shit, man, how many people except touring pros can alter their path that easily? Um,
I'm visual proof, folks. When
yeah,
I go and
yeah,
give lessons,
yeah.
they're expecting these massive changes. We're fortunate with a club golfer to move the thing a degree, maybe two in
Okay,
one.
I'm going to show you massive change in one thing. I want your golfers, your audience, just to stand up, put all their pressure in the toes, and take a swing. Where the hell does the pressure goes back into your heels?
Yeah.
All right. So, like, great players typically set up with slightly more pressure in their toes because they're getting it back there in their heels. Now, touring pros have the exact opposite problem as amateur golfers. Amateur golfers tend to get too much pressure in the toes in the downswing. Now, touring pros they often get stuck too deep into their trail heel.
You know what? Please stop. I want to go there again because just about everybody watching or listening to this has looked at the internet enough, and they're all early extenders, right? So
Yeah.
where body straightens up, all the pressure toward the toes. They think more of the spine angle than what they're doing in their feet, the counterbalance you referenced.
Right.
And then some teaching pro will do a swing analysis for them and show that, well, look at Tiger Woods. Watch how his ass is moving backwards when he's hitting, and he's almost getting
Right.
farther away from the ball. And everyone's trying this, and then they're like trying to hold their spine in position. It's but it's you laughing, but it's the support mechanism underneath that facilitates this stuff.
Well, perfect balance can never be underestimated. Like, to me, golf is a vestibular sport. You need proper balance to be able to play it. So, I mean, there can be mitigating factors that say, okay, I've got a vision problem. I've got low sugar problems, whatever. It doesn't matter. But if you know where to put the pressure to begin with, it gives you a head start and the opportunity to get the pressure in the correct place.
Mhm.
This is the thing that a lot of coaches are missing. Like good friend of mine, Martin Chuck, he doesn't talk too much about pressure, but he's acutely aware of how to use it. He has a pressure mat, and he's an expert at it,
Mhm.
but he incorporates it into a different way of saying things, because I think he believes, and I'm not putting words into Martin's mouth. Martin, if you're listening, tell me by text that I'm an idiot. That's fine. We always do that anyways. But, people are used to being taught positional teaching.
Yeah.
So sometimes we can't necessarily communicate to them the way that we should, because they might not be able to handle it. I know that seems ridiculous. Okay.
Oh, it's true.
But we figured out a new way to fit shafts. I'm not going to take you around the world, but we talked to the largest shaft manufacturer in the world, and we said, would you like to buy the company? And they said, maybe. And they came back later on and said, well, we're on hold there for a while. But their problem is they've already got 98% of the world convinced that you can fit shafts using launch monitors, club head speed data. So now what I've put them in a position where they're going to have to go back and say, hey, we weren't right. You know, so because I'll give you an example, not to change your world, but so you
No.
get three golfers with the same club head speed. I used to make golf shafts as part of our living when we owned Jazz Golf.
Mhm.
We were a partner in a company called Spiral Tech. We made film and graphite shafts for Graphite. We also made fuel canisters for Rockwell and stuff like that. I didn't do that, but they did.
What haven't you done? Okay, but
They were in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was close to where I live, so we made a trip and we ended up liking each other. But you get three golfers with the same club head speed, but entirely different swings, and you're going to fit them with the same shaft. I doubt it. I doubt that's going to work. Well, I helped True Temper collect data when we built Shaft Lab. And the first guy, we put string gauges on shafts and we collected all the lead, leg, and droop. By the way, Satchel got his PhD using Shaft Lab. Satchel, you owe me on that side too, baby. All right.
Okay, if you're watching.
Okay, Satchel, you better call me on that one. Okay, I'm just kidding, but he did get his PhD using Shaft Lab, lead, leg, and droop. Now, what was interesting, the first time that my partners at True Temper took me to Bay Hill, we fitted short, tight swing, Lanny Watkins.
Yeah.
We couldn't find a shaft heavy enough for him. We couldn't find it because that back then weight was equivalent to flex.
Mm-hmm.
And then next up, Freddie Couples, who I knew because he went to University of Houston. We weren't tight, and but he knew my nickname Hash because I played golf in Miami. We played against him, and we did okay.
Yeah.
But Freddie Couples, on the other hand, he had such a smooth swing, and he hits the ball. Keep in mind, 40 yards past Lanny. He says, Hash, what shaft you should use? And the guys at True Temper, my good friend Bobby Montgomery, he doesn't want to tell him what we're seeing. He says, you go tell him. And it was an L. I lied. I said an A. And he starts laughing. He goes back to his bag, pulls out that 3-wood he's got, which was Tom Watson's ex-wife.
It was a regular shaft, wasn't
it? With a whippy shaft.
I've heard the story.
Yeah, and so and that story is 100% true, by the way. And ever since then, after I developed the world's first speed-rated series of shaft based on 70, 80, 90, 100 mile an hour plus club head speeds, which using a Beltronic swing mate, which was the precursor to launch monitors, and it became a very popular way of fitting shafts back in the sometime in the mid 90s. I bring it up to speed. Now we're using kinetic energy algorithm, which I patented and sold to a group in San Antonio to measure the actual kinetic energy or a variation of it to color code a shaft fitting system called Swing Balance AI. Okay. And it's out there. We presented it to Callaway about, 9 months ago. I can't remember. I had a bit of a stroke in December and some of the things. And they liked it. And they said, we can only get about 7 to 10 yards improvement in distance. We're going to put it on hold for a while. Now, let me ask you a question. If I designed a club head that could give you 7 to 10 yards more distance, how many millions of dollars would you give me? And keep in mind, I am a club head designer. That's what I used to do at Jazz Golf. The world's crazy, Mark. The world doesn't get it because they don't get the information on time. And Golf Digest, I'm going to, forgive me, but, you only published articles about people that are paying for ads in your magazines. Mm-hmm. You're not getting the true data to the people.
Terry, Hash, I have this podcast because, one, I want to bring people around the world information from I want to expose all the bright minds to people around the world. I want to make stuff available. I want to bring understanding to people because I've written for magazines. When you have an editor and you got to clip your information to so many words, and I have a morbid fear of misunderstanding because then some golfer is going to read this, not get it completely, like I have been when I used the BodiTrak system first, and likely ruined more folks than what I should have fixed. Because for instructors, we have a massive responsibility, and for all you teachers listening to this, I'm lecturing now and I'm saying, you better know your shit.
Yes.
Because you have a responsibility. Okay. So to that. So now you can use the pressure mapping for shaft fitting. I can thoroughly believe that. I want to then still camp around the reading of the data, because we talked about the lateral. And now we're in an era where everyone's talking about the vertical, the jump, box jumping, jump. And I'm watching, I can see you've taken off your glasses. You ready for me? I'm watching club golfers bouncing all over the place, hitting golf balls far and wide and becoming worse. So please, would you bring the truth to everyone listening and watching this?
I'm in California, 8 or 9 years ago. And keep in mind, I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm just a little shit from nowhere. And they asked me to do a speech to the California golf section. And up next is Dave Phillips. And I know what Dave Phillips is going to be talking about because he told me. And I go up there and I said, great golfers don't jump. And I'm thinking, oh God, he's going to kill me after. And I said, that vertical force is a result of you putting pressure to the lead side early, and you have to clear. I call it the brake effect, because the harder you can brake on your lead side, early extension is not a bad thing. Nicholas said you can extend at any time as long as you have your weight in the right place at the right time. Alex J. Morrison wrote a book called Gravity Golf in and around the 30s.
I haven't.
And Alex J. Morrison talks about the game being properly paid if the toes are curled slightly upward. When we had the chance to work with
Hogan said that he could wiggle the toes inside of his shoes when he played golf.
And he was absolutely great. He was Sam Snead said, I don't know why, but he was at that place in Washington. I don't know how or why, but when I take off my shoes and curl up my feet, I hit the ball so well, I can't believe it. Yeah. More or less. He didn't say it like that, but it kind of said it like that. And there's it's hard to find that clip, but Alex J. Morrison, he mentored Jack Grout.
Nicholas.
Right. And later on, again, my memory not so good, but down at Lagos and all that, I went to Miami, and he was there, and we listened, but I guess where I'm trying to go with this is that the number one way to gain distance and ball control is to get pressure to the lead side early, have the strength and stability to keep it there. And when that lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way back, the great players have most of the pressure already going forward to the lead side. And you see, I've even seen now Mike Shia, that's the only word I'm going to use. You know who he coached.
Yeah, right.
All right. So I'm not going to use that name, but I'm going to let you use that name. Yeah. And that guy's trace doesn't really go backwards. It goes straight forward. Now, there's a very famous biomechanic, and it starts with a doctor and a K, Dr. Kwan, I'll just say it. And Shai told Kwan that, and Kwan says that's, it cannot be. And it just turns out that Bryson is so fabulously strong on his lead side. He's asymmetrical. And that's really golf is not a symmetrical game. Tennis isn't a symmetrical game. You take the forearm of a tennis player, whichever arm they serve with.
Bigger than the other.
Much bigger. And golf, if you want to train properly, train asymmetrically. Train on your lead side. Now, if you've got an injury on your lead side, obviously, please don't do that. But if you have an injury on your lead side, you're kind of screwed. Because now you have to play off the trail side. But there's ways of getting around that, and we can talk about that another time, maybe offline. But the number one thing that great players do is they set up with more pressure on the trail side. Their toes are relatively free. That's why I like square shoes so much, because when we did the research on it, it lightened. I was allowed me to get more wiggle my toes, as Mr. Hogan said.
Yeah.
Because I don't want my toes curled down. Because the minute I curl my toes down, I'm screwed. Because now all my pressure is in my toes. Okay. I got no freedom. The toes are the brakes, heels are the accelerator. You want to get pressure to the trail heel as early as you can. And then you push from the trail heel, not the trail toe, to the lead side. And after that, it's up to God. As a commercially rated pilot, and the guys who mentored me flying, you'd laugh at this, Mark. They say we're all passengers the last 50 feet. And we're all passengers the last 50 feet. Because there's not a hell of a lot you can do in an airplane at 50 feet. You're buggered one way or the other. It's how you set up the approach. And it's like that in golf. I like a long, stabilized approach for landing my airplanes. I like a long, stabilized approach to get into contact with my golf ball. But if you release early, that's not the end of the world, as long as your pressure's in your heel.
Yeah. We started that conversation with a jump thing. And I love the way that you were like, okay, it's because the pressure moves onto the forward side. But I see, for one, because people will hear this and they'll be like, well, Hash said. So then they start going left for right-handers, leftward, and they just keep going way, way too long, and everything buckles down and they get all tilted out, and then the bottom of the golf swings all over the show. Talk a little bit about that into the forward side and then the push off, the rotate up and out into the follow through, please.
If I said trap the club to an old time teacher, they're thinking I'm thinking shut the club, shut it down. When I say trap the pressure, it's a different thing. What we learned, I want to share with you, Mark, something I've never shared anywhere, and this is a premier world. Trust me. Great players can't rotate their lead foot at impact just prior.
Okay. In the interests of making sure that our audience doesn't misunderstand that, when you say counter rotate the lead foot, explain what that is.
Okay, so I was taught to open my left foot. I'm a right-handed golfer. My lead foot.
You had the square trail foot and the forward foot turn to quarter turn out. Yeah.
That turns out to be the biggest bullshit lesson I ever got in my life, because what you want to have is a square foot. Okay. And because the minute you open it up, you're releasing the pressure as you get towards impact. Imagine opening it up more, because now you're opening up your hip. Now you're hitting against.
You're actually pushing yourself backwards, right?
Well, you're imagine throwing water, a pail of water at a wall. When you do that, the water is going to go up the wall. Okay, and that's that's called a resultant force. The water going up the wall is like a golfer jumping, because they're trapping the pressure on their lead side. They have the strength and stability to keep it there, but their instincts to save their body jumps and clears. Otherwise, they break their knee, or hurt their ankle. So when you line up, because we're all about safety, Mark, the safest way to hit the ball properly and long is to line up the joints where the toes, the ankle, the knee, the hip, and the wrist, the elbow, and shoulder are all in alignment at impact. Justin James is the most remarkable species on this planet. He trains like a beast. He can hit it like
kettlebells.
Yeah, but he lines up the joints perfectly at impact. His pressure, he maintains all his pressure on his lead side from P3. When that lead arm is parallel to the ground all the way to impact, that pressure stays and remains on his lead side. And then he massively clears by pushing back off his lead toe to his lead heel. And that's only, but he did that instinctively.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years ago, we started working together. I didn't help him with this game. Don't misunderstand working together. We started to try to interpret and understand his pressure data as well as his 3D data. We go see Puggy Blackman at Privis Health down in West Columbia, South Carolina. Yeah. And they have a great orthopedic group there. And we'd work with them and do all the 3D stuff and do the pressure stuff, use AMTI force plates. We use BodiTrak and compare it. And JJ, he gets pressure to the lead side faster than any other golfer that I've ever seen, except Mr. Shy's guy, and has the strength and stability to keep it there.
Yeah, well, I've seen footage of Bryson when he was a young man, before college even, and he essentially just pivoted on that front leg.
That's it.
That one plane action that they had going on, and there was sort of the end of range motion he was talking about.
But this is where the modern golfer, Mark, really needs to think about this. Guys like Ballard, Toski, guys taught me to have lateral shift, move to the right, move to the left. Not a bad idea, except the modern golfer no longer needs to get to the trail side. They hardly get pressure to the trail side at all anymore. They go straight forward, have the strength and stability to keep it there. And if they line their joints up properly at impact, there's no injury as long as you clear properly. And that clearing is the jump you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
You ask any one of those guys, do I actually try to jump vertically? They'll tell you no.
Yes, I'm so glad you would point that out, because I find it's a misunderstanding in the game and it's bothersome to me. And I'll share this, and I want your commentary. When I was a young instructor coming up, I learned by asking questions like you did. I learned by questioning ideas. I learned by hitting a ball. I mean, I learned more about playing golf from playing cricket with a flat-face bat.
Yes.
Than anything else. I learned that your swing path, you could point the bat the wrong way and go in that direction, and the ball doesn't go where the bat's going toward.
Absolutely.
So I always believed that the club face was king over the swing path, which initially drew ire from people, but now they're realizing this. But I had footage that I had found somewhere of Bobby Jones, black and white. Bob Jones is my hero. Wound up, long, languid, silky, and all the rest of it. A lot of heel action, right? So the heel's off the ground, the forward heel. And where he replanted this thing, at address, he was just turned marginally open. But when he planted that heel down, it squared up at a right angle to the target line. And I looked at this and I looked at this, and it kept me awake at night. And then the one day I'll never forget, my brother had just turned pro, my brother Trevor, and he was struggling, but he was losing all of his shape through impact and stuff. And so I made him practice with his forward heel turned outward some. So his toes are pointing inward.
Right.
Match stuff up. The braking system you talked about worked quickly. Body posted up, club past him. He won that following week, his first professional win in Kenya. And it was because I just saw Hogan do something that was completely out of the ordinary back there then in the early 90s when I began teaching golf.
Well, that's called, in my lingo, that's called corner rotation.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not saying my lingo is the right lingo, by the way. And what your brother did there is absolutely correct. Thanks to you, Mark. Now, what I liked about Bobby Jones, because I'm not a hands guy, but he hinged the club. He released the club with his lead pinky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And to generate a little bit more lever. And that's in Sasho's area. I know about as much about physics as I do about marrying women, not too much. And so, but that little, but if that's another way of gaining distance. But the marriage of proper footwork and the understanding of proper hand is beautiful if you can do that. Now, I'm not a hands guy, so I won't go too deep into that. But one thought that we've also seen is that, does the lead hand corner rotate while the trail hand rotates in the opposite direction to maintain stability on the lead side? The answer to that is absolutely yes. I mean, again, but we're getting into pressure. We can measure the pressure in the hands too.
Yeah, and it gets back to how I kicked this conversation off, where I'm like, I contend that if you've got a decent understanding of how you hold the club and how you maneuver it and how you work on the ground, you're on your way to success. And so I want to put a bow on this conversation. Thanks for your time with this observation and your commentary. Again, the internet is a fabulous place. You can find this podcast there, but you can also find all sorts of stuff if you're not looking, and you'll go down the wrong path. And I find every golfer, almost to a man or woman right now, it's rotation. In fact, I gave a lesson yesterday, and she had looked on the internet and it was rotation, talking about rotation. And I was like, Barbara, be a little careful here. And instead of her rotating, I said, I want you to do two things for me. I want you to feel like you're going to speed up the club through contact, and then feel it go past you, feel it follow you, and then follow it and just try and get yourself looking toward the target. And all of a sudden, her rotation improved, because when she was speeding up the club and her feet were moving properly, all of a sudden she started turning properly. Your commentary of that, please.
Well, to me, golf is like dancing. If we know what to do with our feet, everything else will follow suit. Because we're always, the minute you walk, we're in a counterbalance scenario, because you've got one hand going forward, the other one going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about counterbalance, and it's all about injury prevention. Because look at, if you're not healthy, or if you have an injury on one side of your body, or like if you're weak on your trail side, you that's okay, but you need to know it, and you need to know what exercises are required so that you can gain proper strength.
Yeah.
Golf to me is a lead side game, so we have to understand, if I have an injury on my lead side, what do I have to do to compensate, or am I going to create an injury for me if I try to get to the lead side?
Mm-hmm.
So the things that we've learned from pressure mapping, Mark, are unbelievable. And I want to just share with you a thought. Like, one of the guys who really helped us learn a lot also was Jim McLean. And Jim used to tell me, he says, Terry, you may not be right on all your numbers. Don't use proper numbers. Don't use specific numbers. Don't say 55, 65. Just say a range of numbers,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to be different for everybody, Mark.
Yeah.
But what is clear, the evidence supports, is that if you set up with more pressure on the lead side early, that buys you time if you make some mistakes getting pressure to the trail side. Number two is that counterbalance is absolutely essential in order to be able to maintain proper balance to impact. And to your point, in my opinion, the only thing that counts in golf is impact. And to have proper impact, you have to have a strong lead side and get pressure to the lead side early. I hope I didn't take too much of your time today.
No, I love you. I need your commendation here, please. I'm trying to self-affirm.
Yes.
way back in the day, I just got a plank. It was about yay wide. And I just, because I felt like almost like a teeter-totter, like a seesaw.
Right.
If you can understand that thing properly. And then I put a little piece of wood in the middle of it, so it essentially went back or forth, left or right.
Right.
And I would stand on it and start on the lead side, go to the trail side and try and put the lead side back down before I hit the top of my backswing.
Right.
And I put that on the internet, and some folks loved it, some folks hated it. They were like, "Oh, this has already been done," and stuff like that. But that's what you're saying to you. Like you start forward, you move back, but then you go back forward before people think, because too many golfers are going backwards too long as well, huh?
Yeah, I've used that board many, many times. It's the best thing you can do if you don't have a pressure mat. Even if you have a pressure mat, it's a great way to learn it. As soon as you take it back, goes trail lead, trail lead, trail lead, trail lead, trail lead, trail lead. And to me, that's a form of dancing, because if you have proper footwork, look, everybody saw the Super Bowl. Well, those two brothers that were playing against each other. They asked the old man, they asked the old man, how do you make such talented athletes? What do you do to make a pro athlete? He says, just put them on a hockey rink or teach them soccer. In other words, get some foot movement patterns, because if you have proper foot movement patterns, Mark, the rest is easy.
Terry, Hash, you're a genius. You're a legend. I appreciate you joining us. I'm thankful that I was scrolling around on the internet because I had you on my list of guests, and then I got busy with broadcasts and stuff. And then you were tweeting the other day, or Instagramming, or whatever it was, and I'm like, he's there, he's back, and I messaged you. So anyway, long-winded to say that, folks, he is on social media, so please share the handles where they can find you.
Well, just Terry Hashimoto. That's it on Facebook and Instagram. I try to share with the family as much as I can, but I do put some golf stuff out there. And we're going to be working in Toronto with a new team called Modern Golf, and their vision is the same as mine, which is to make golf a recovery sport, help people with any balance issues, and bring new people to the game by using golf as a way to improve your balance.
So where can they find more on that? Because time's caught up with us, and you did mention using golf as a recovery sport, which I think is tremendous. So where can folks go for more of that?
Golfrehab.com.
Golfrehab.com.
You'll start seeing more and more about that. But follow me on Terry Hashimoto on just Terry Hashimoto on Instagram. And Mark, I'll be following you all the time. So thank you so much, sir. It's been an honor.
My pleasure. Thank you.